Hey cuties, what's up? We're back with some more reactions after dark, and we of course going to be watching Horrors of Disneyland, obviously by Question. Obviously, I'm using my analog horror model today. I'm going to try to retire Belock? Question mark. You know the rabbit, right? People might be upset about that. I don't know if anyone will just like quit watching the channel because of that. We'll get into that whenever Stephanie uploads a video, and then I'll get further into detail on why I'm going to potentially do that. I don't know if I'm fully going to do it. I'm just deciding if I will or not, right? Because I have 1,000 models I can use, right? Or I can make a new one. I need to make a new one. I need to make a penguin, right? I need to use the penguins that I have and then turn them into a model somehow. But yeah, anyways, I think we're just going to get straight into it today because I don't have any... where's the thing? Is this? Yeah, I don't have any tea today. I do have a lot of tea to talk about, but I typically save that for when I know a lot of people are going to show up, right? So we'll have to wait for any tea that I want to discuss. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get straight into it. This is a weird one for Question, right? Because he's usually doing things about locations, location-based true crime, question mark. Right, and this is, well, I guess this technically is a location, right? Disneyland is a location. But it's typically no disturbing internet horrors of insert location: California, America, Mexico, France, China, Japan, etc. Right? So Horrors of Disneyland is kind of like an offshoot of that. I did notice that he has Disney font here for his name, which is interesting. He probably kept that really short though with the audio, right? Doesn't want to get copyrighted. Disclaimer, this video discusses real tragic events that occurred at Disney parks. Some details may be disturbing. Some elements are dramatized for storytelling purposes. Some footage shown is from Disney parks and is used under fair use for commentary and discussion. I wonder if he got copyrighted. It doesn't say down there, like I wouldn't be able to know. It does make this feel like I'm going to get copyrighted. Epcot's hostage situation. That does not sound familiar, question mark, to me. Making sure it's not too loud.
On the evening of Saturday, September 12, 1992, Alan Ferris walked through the front gates at Epcot.
1992. That is a long time ago.
The evening of Saturday, September 12, 1992, Alan Ferris walked through the front gates at Epcot. He was 37 years old. He was dressed like anyone else, blending in easily with the thousands of tourists moving through the entrance plaza that night. He did not look dangerous. Didn't even look out of place. He simply looked like another guest carrying a bag. At that time, getting into a Disney park was a frictionless experience. There were no metal detectors, there were no security tents, and no mandatory bag checks. You would park your car, presented a ticket at the turnstile, and walked right in. Alan walked into the park, carrying a dark duffel bag, and inside that bag was a fully loaded 12-gauge sawed-off shotgun and a handful of extra shells. He would navigate through the crowds of families, walking past the ambient lighting, the carefully maintained flower beds, and the popcorn carts. But he was not there to ride anything. He was there to find a specific woman. By the late summer of 1992, Alan's personal life had entirely unraveled. He had recently gone through a severe, messy breakup. His ex-girlfriend, working as a security...
So like breakup, like for a breakup, that's it? I was like, okay, his wife, right? He's going for his wife. Just a breakup, not even a freaking marriage, just a breakup. At 37?
Inside Walt Disney World. The separation had broken...
Older than me? And you're going through all this over a breakup?
Ex-girlfriend, working as a security guard inside Walt Disney World. The separation had broken him. He was unable to let the relationship go, and over the course of several weeks, his behavior had become desperate and erratic. He stalked her, harassed her. He had already survived his attempt in the wake of the breakup. His actions escalated to a point where his ex-girlfriend went to the local authorities for protection.
That's a restraining order?
A legal restraining order against him. The court order was meant to be a hard physical boundary, a legal mandate requiring him to stay away from her home, and her place of work. But a restraining order is just a piece of paper. and it only works if the person it targets still cares about the consequences of breaking the law. But
I wonder in the future if restraining orders will be a physical like object. I mean, a piece of paper is a physical object, but it's actually like a piece of tech that you get given to you that maybe gets the DNA of the person put into it that you don't want around, right? And then because of that, if they get within a certain distance from you, either maybe it starts, like it somehow can detect I don't know, how far do we want to go? 100 feet, 200 feet, 100 or so, 200 or so feet. I mean, it could have the DNA detector, but it would have to have like some sort of chip implanted into the person, right? Okay, we're gonna have to go like way far here. Work with me here. The person gets a chip implanted into them that's constantly making sure it's still inside the person, right? And that is sending a signal outward, and if it pings off of the person's device that they have on them, that once a restraining order, it'll start maybe making sirens or whatnot. But then possibly you could have a secondary object also in, or maybe the main object that's already implanted into the restraining person. I mean, this is going too far, right, for just a restraining order. But if we live into a dystopia, this might be how it works, right? That object that's already implanted, that's constantly pinging to see if it gets near something. If it gets a ping back saying, hey, you're too close to this person, it delivers, like, I don't know, a taser shot into them, enough to knock them down, right? And it alerts the, I don't know, authorities, question mark, right? Of course, this could be abused, but it's something I could see happening in a slight dystopian future, question mark.
But as for Alan, he had reached a point where he no longer cared about jail time, fines, or his own future. He knew exactly where she worked. He knew her shift schedule. He even knew the layout of the theme park. A theme park operates on the unspoken assumption that the real world, that with its domestic disputes, its violence, and its unpredictability, cannot cross into the theme park. Guests and employees naturally assume that they're inside a protected bubble. Alan carried his bag through the crowds, walking right past the invisible boundary of the restraining order, bringing a deadly weapon directly into the place where she was supposed to be the most secure. A theme park completely transforms after the sun goes down and the closing announcements begin. The cheerful background music continues to play from the hidden speakers. The noise of the crowd slowly drops away, and as Epcot officially closed for the night, the operations team began their standard routine. The rides were powered down, the maintenance crew began dragging out the hoses to wash the walkways, and the security guards began their nightly sweeps to ensure all the guests had left. But Alan had not left. He had stayed inside the park, lingering in the shadows near the pavilions, waiting for the crowds to thin. He was eventually spotted as unarmed Disney security guards were doing their exterior sweeps.
So yeah, where is he going to end up being? But they said unarmed, so there's nothing they can do about it.
They saw a man lingering in an area that was supposed to be clear. They approached him, likely intending to tell him the park was closed and guide him toward the front gates. But Alan did not wait for them to speak. He unzipped his bag, and he pulled out his 12-gauge sawed-off shotgun, racked the slide, and leveled it at the approaching guards. And he pulled the trigger. The blast echoed violently across the empty concrete of the park. He pumped the shotgun and fired again, scattering the unarmed guards. He fired.
Okay, so he didn't shoot at them, he shot around them?
3 times in total, but he actually didn't hit them.
Okay.
But he didn't need to. The deafening sound of a shotgun was enough to force the guards to dive for cover and scramble for their radios. With the guards falling back, Alan retreated and moved quickly into the Journey into Imagination Pavilion. It was a massive structure, defined by its striking geometric glass pyramids, designed to celebrate creativity and childhood wonder. And now, with the interior lights dimmed and all the guests gone, it was just a quiet, echoing building. Alan slipped inside through a set of doors and moved into one of the pavilion's public restrooms on the first floor. The space was bright. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. He stood in the quiet room, chambered a fresh round, and waited in the silence. Not everyone in the park knew what had just happened outside. While the exterior guards were radioing in the active shooter situation, 2 other Disney security guards were already inside the Journey to Imagination Pavilion during the...
I'm wondering what time of day it is, because it's closing time, but does closing time still have daylight, or is it nighttime? Because obviously we're using shots from day and night, so I don't know what the time of day is for this.
routine sweeps. In the early 1990s, Disney security guards were entirely unarmed.
Why would they be?
Radios and flashlights. Their primary training was in customer service. The two guards walked through the doors of the pavilion and pushed open the door to the public restroom. They expected to find empty stalls, and then move on to the next building, but as they opened the door, they walked directly into the barrel of a sawed-off shotgun. Alan Ferris was standing under the bright fluorescent lights, his feet planted, the weapon being leveled squarely at their chest. The guards froze, their hands went up instinctively, their mouths went completely dry. Staring down the massive dark bore of a 12-gauge shotgun from just a few feet away is an image that the brain struggles to process, especially when it happens inside a brightly lit restroom at Epcot. Alan backed him into the corner against the cold tile wall. He didn't ask for their wallets, he didn't ask for keys to the building. He kept his gun steady, stared at the two men, and gave them a single very clear order. He told them to use their radios.
I'm assuming he's gonna have them call her.
He ordered them to contact dispatch immediately and demand that his ex-girlfriend be brought down to this exact restroom. Standing just feet away from Alan, keeping his eyes locked on the gun, one of the guards slowly reached down to his belt, his hands shaking violently, unclipping the radio, and spoke into it. The man's voice echoing off the tile walls. He relayed the situation to the Central Security Office, telling him that they were trapped inside the restroom by a man holding a shotgun pointed at them, and he told them exactly who the man was demanding to see. Disney security immediately knew that they could not handle this internally. They locked down the immediate perimeter. They located the female guard Alan was asking for, and secured her in a room on the other side of the property, far away from the pavilion.
I guess, like, are they actually going to give her over or not? Because I was like, there's no way they just hand her over, right? That wouldn't happen, question mark, which I'm hoping that didn't happen. Again, I've never heard of this story before, which is, it seems like such a crazy story that it'd be something you would have heard about. But I feel like for sure I have never heard of this. Does no one die? I would assume if nothing else that he maybe dies, either by himself or by cop, but maybe that's why I haven't heard of it, because no one dies and everyone's fine at the end. I doubt it though.
Of course, they were not going to give him what he wanted. And then they picked up their phone and called the Orange County Sheriff's Office.
Of course.
Within minutes, the perimeter of Epcot was completely swarmed. Heavily armed sheriff's deputies poured onto the property. Police cruisers completely surrounded the perimeter. Even SWAT officers, and they would form a tight tactical perimeter around the pavilion.
Probably still too hard to get him though, right? Because he's in a bathroom, which is a one-way, a small one-way location, right? No way else to get in there, nothing else you can really do, unless you can, I don't know, somehow use an anti-material gun or something. Something with a lot of kick and just guess where he's at and just shoot him through the wall, I guess, is something you could do. If you really just want to get rid of him, but I don't know.
The massive glass pyramids of the building reflected the strobing red and blue lights of the police vehicles parked on the concrete outside. It was now the early hours of Sunday, September 13th. Inside the bright tiled restroom, the passage of time slowed down to an agonizing crawl.
I don't know if, like, 1999 they had the tech to just shoot someone through a wall that they couldn't see.
The hostage portion of the standoff lasted roughly 10 minutes. But for the two guards
Only
back
10 minutes.
It felt like hours. They were trapped in a windowless box. Every sound in the room was magnified.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I wasn't finished that with that. One-way entrance into this room. Nothing's there. No windows. No way else to get in there. With hostages on top of that. You know, like, what do you do in this situation?
They could hear the heavy, nervous breathing of the man holding the gun. They watched Alan's hands constantly, watching his finger resting on the trigger guard. A sawed-off shotgun is heavy, and holding it at chest height takes a physical toll.
Are they just hoping that he gets exhausted and drops the gun so they can get in there and get him?
Every time Alan shifted his weight, every time his arm got tired and the barrel dipped or raised a fraction of an inch, the guards flinched, bracing for a blast that would completely tear them apart. Outside, police negotiators established contact, telling Alan they had the building surrounded. They were trying to reason with him and trying to de-escalate the situation. Alan paced in the small space. The manic adrenaline from firing the shots outside was beginning to burn off, leaving behind a heavy, suffocating exhaustion. He was sweating, looking at the door repeatedly, and then back to the two guards, and he started muttering disjointed fragments of sentences, and the minutes dragged on. The sirens had completely stopped, replaced by the heavy organized movements of tactical teams stacking up outside the doors. Alan listened to the sounds outside. The reality of the situation finally settled over him. He had bypassed security, brought the gun inside, fired shots and taken hostages. but the police were absolutely not going to bring his ex-girlfriend to an armed, unstable man.
I mean, obviously, right? So, I'm guessing he was hoping to find her, but I guess he didn't really think that through too well. Like, oh, let me just take a couple people hostage and then ask them to give me my girlfriend, my ex-girlfriend. Obviously, that was never going to work. Well, maybe he could assume that they would just betray her like that, but clearly not.
The two guards watched his body language begin to change. His shoulders dropped. The heavy barrel of the shotgun lowered slightly toward the floor, and he stopped pacing. He looked at the two men pressed against the tile. They were just two guys in polo shirts, sweating through their collars, waiting to be killed over a relationship they had nothing to do with. And Alan made his choice. He told the guards to get out, and they didn't hesitate. They backed away slowly, keeping their hands completely visible until they were past the threshold of the door. They walked quickly out of the building, and as soon as they crossed the police perimeter, their legs nearly gave out. They were physically unharmed, but they were entirely drained. They had just survived the most terrifying 10 minutes of their entire lives. With the hostages now clear, the entire dynamic of the standoff shifted. Alan Ferris was now completely alone.
I was like, now how did they get in there without him shooting them? Question mark.
And being surrounded, he had nowhere to go. Deputies outside gave him clear verbal commands, telling him to put the weapon down on the floor, telling him to walk out slowly with his hands empty. Alan did not answer the negotiators. He stood under the lights. He gripped the heavy wood of the stock, turned the barrel of the 12-gauge shotgun upward, and pointed it at himself.
Yeah, I figured like there's only one way, right? Or a few ways this would end, and this was one of them, right? Where he takes himself out, right?
And he pulled the trigger. The deafening sound of the gunshot violently filled the small tiled box. The sound echoed heavily outside the pavilion, rolling across the empty concrete walkways and bouncing off the surrounding structures. The deputies immediately rushed to the doors, clearing the building and pushing to the restroom with their weapons drawn, and they found Alan Ferris on the floor, the wound, of course, being massive and immediately fatal. There was no need to call for paramedics, and the standoff was over. It was the early hours of Sunday morning. The sun would come up in just a few hours. By 9 a.m., the front gates of Epcot would open again.
What, they're just gonna pretend like then nothing happened, right? A guy just held a bunch of people hostage, had a standoff with the police, and then ended himself in the bathroom. And it's like, oh, Disney gotta go back to work. Back to work, gotta make that money. Like, really? Not closed off for a day, a week, a month? Question mark? I don't know what that would... if being off for a month would do any, like, damage to the property. I don't know. Yeah, gotta open. It would be crazy if that bathroom was still allowed, right? That would be not nonsensical. Like, really? Y'all cleaned it up that fast? It's like, oh, let's get to work. Also, what about the, like, gunshots into the ground is what I'm assuming he shot at, so the damage to the ground, the damage to the bathroom, was they just sectioned off those locations? And it's like, oh, yeah, go about your day, nothing happened here. Just some minor damage that happened. Like, what?
And thousands of families would come pouring through the turnstiles, expecting a flawless, magical experience. Police processed the scene as fast as they legally could. Photographs were taken, the bodies removed. The shotgun and shell casing were collected in evidence bags. And as soon as police cleared the room, the maintenance crew moved in. They worked silently and rapidly in the dark. The restroom was closed off as they scrubbed the tile, washed down the walls, and sterilized the space. And when the park opened on Sunday morning, it opened exactly on time. Families were now walking past that pavilion and had absolutely no idea what had just happened hours earlier. And internally, the reality of what Alan Ferris had done created a permanent shift. It was a turning point that eventually led to the modern era of theme park security, the addition of bag checks, metal detectors, and a heavier police presence. Millions of people have walked through that specific pavilion the decade since 1992. Every single day, guests stand at those sinks and wash their hands, looking in the mirror completely unaware that where they were standing was the exact spot where that illusion of safety broke down entirely.
Yeah, did they just, like, never tell anybody? Is that why I've never heard of this? Because they just kept it down low this whole time? It's like, oh yeah, someone ended themselves in the bathroom, but we cleaned it up real good. Nobody could even ever tell, right? Cleaned up all the blood, all the material. We somehow fixed the roof? Question mark. I would assume would have got damaged from this, etc., etc. If any lights were broken, same thing.
And where a desperate man decided to end his own life.
Yeah, I mean, that's just crazy that they still opened up the exact same day that they saw it. Well, I guess technically the next day, right? I'm assuming it hadn't. It was still the same. It was still the previous day when it happened. So, yeah, it just opened up the next day, like nothing happened. That is just ludicrous, right? Also, that's the longest story out of this. That was like half the video, so there's only two more horrors, quote unquote, after this. At least like no one got hurt except for him, but it's still like he didn't have to, die either. So it's still, oof. Pluto and the parade floats. Pluto the dog from Mickey Mouse? Question mark.
There is a literal and physical boundary at every single theme park. It is a line that separates the bright, carefully controlled fantasy that guests pay to see from the heavy industrial reality that actually makes it run. Usually, this boundary is nothing more than a pair of large wooden gates or a thick wall of trees. If you step to one side, you are completely surrounded by cheerful music, the clean sidewalks, and the perfect architecture. Go to the other side, and the music instantly starts to fade, and is replaced by the hum of generators and the sight of raw concrete staging areas. Javier Cruz spent his working life crossing back and forth over that line. He was 38 years old. He worked at Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World, Florida. He had a family at home, including 2 children who knew exactly what their father did for a living. And his job was to cross that line every single afternoon, to leave his own identity on the concrete and then become someone else. His job was a character performer. Specifically, he was Pluto.
Yeah.
And by all accounts, Javier was deeply committed to his work. He'd been doing this for nearly 8 years, and he knew exactly what it took to bring that animated dog to life. And he also knew that physical toll that it demanded. Being a costume performer in Central Florida is incredibly demanding labor. When you put on a suit, you are encased in heavy layers of synthetic fabric and thick industrial foam. The temperature inside the costume can easily climb past 100 degrees on a warm afternoon, meaning you sweat constantly. But the heat is only part of that challenge. The hardest part is actually navigating the world.
What's it called? Pluto and the parade floats. Like, is he gonna have a heat stroke in there, or what? Like, what's gonna happen with him on the on the parade float? Like, is he just gonna have heat stroke on this float in front of everybody, and no one's going to realize that he's gone as his float goes through Disneyland? Question mark.
When Javier put on the Pluto head, his vision was instantly reduced. He could only see through a tiny mesh screen hidden in the neck of the dog. He had absolutely no peripheral vision. If he wanted to look at something beside him, he had to physically turn his entire torso. If he needed to look down, he had to tilt the massive heavy foam head forward, not even mentioning that he had to wear oversized paws on his feet.
We're really going into like the fact that he can't see. He has to physically move his body to see anything. The suit's weighing him down. What is going to happen to this man?
They were long, wide, and clumsy. Walking normally was nearly impossible. Moving in the suit at all required a specific kind of stepping, almost like marching. You had to lift your knee up high, plant the heavy shoe flatly on the ground, and repeat the same motion just to keep yourself from tripping. But Javier was used to all of this. After 8 years, the awkward walk and the suffocating heat were just part of his muscle memory, and he knew pretty well how to navigate the crowds. On Wednesday, February 11th, 2004, the park was operating exactly as it always did. The weather was actually mild, the crowds were heavy, and the afternoon entertainment was running on schedule. At 3 o'clock every day, the Share a Dream Come True parade goes through the streets of the park. The parade featured dozens of walking performers, dancers, and a line of enormous elaborate floats. These floats were essentially rolling multi-level buildings. They were built on top of a heavy truck chassis, and they were covered in thousands of pounds of fiberglass, steel framing, and moving animatronic parts. And because they were entirely enclosed in the decorative shell, the drivers sat deep inside the structures. A driver inside one of these floats sat in a small, isolated compartment. They navigated the tight parade route by peering through tiny hidden windows or small video monitors wired to external cameras, meaning they had massive blind spots. A driver.
Okay, so is someone going to run over the audience, or is someone going to run over Pluto? Javier
could not see the ground directly in front of their own wheels. Just before 3 o'clock, the parade cast gathered in the backstage staging area. It was located right behind the wooden gates near Splash Mountain. Cast members were getting into their starting positions and pulling the heavy character heads over their faces. Once the heads went on, they were no longer allowed to speak. They could only communicate with each other through exaggerated gestures, nods, and hand signals. Javier was fully dressed in the Pluto suit. His assignment for the specific parade was to walk near the front of the Beauty and the Beast float.
They actually have like a full 3D render of this Pluto costume.
This float was massive. It was a towering three-part structure designed to look like a series of enormous snow globes. It carried several performers and weighed thousands of pounds. Javier took his position near the front of the vehicle, and the cue was given. The cheerful, upbeat parade music started blaring through the hidden speakers out in the park. The heavy wooden gate slowly swung open, and the parade officially started. The walking characters always went out first, leading the large vehicles. Javier started moving forward toward the open gates, and behind him, the driver of the Beauty and the Beast float put the heavy machine into gear, and the massive structure started to roll forward. They were still in the backstage staging area. They were just approaching the open gates when something interrupted Javier's rhythm. Maybe the fabric of the costume shifted. Maybe the oversized paws caught an uneven patch of the concrete floor. But regardless, his foot was caught, falling forward hard onto the concrete. Inside the suit, he was entirely trapped, the foam head hitting the ground, jarring his already limited vision. He was lying on the pavement, encased in heavy padding, unable to easily bend his knees or use his hands to push himself up.
So even just the cloth that isn't his feet and hands and head is restrictive. Like it's even hard just to bend and move around. Like I feel like why do they make it like that? Why wouldn't it just be like a thin enough piece of fabric? I guess like they need some sort of infrastructure inside the suit to keep it shaped the way they want it to be shaped, I guess. I'm assuming that when he fell, the head like twisted to the left or right, so his vision is like completely obscured, right? Because the weight of falling would have caused it to turn either way. Like it wouldn't have done any damage to him, I would assume. It's just he literally physically can't see, right? Because the face isn't facing the right way.
He had almost no visibility to see what was coming behind him. The loud parade music was echoing off the walls, and the diesel engine of the float was roaring right at his back. Even if he screamed for help, it was impossible to hear a human voice from inside the foam head over the overwhelming noise of the staging area.
Yeah, but I mean, everyone around them can see, but I guess, yeah, again, there's like a dead spot in front of them, so anything on the ground they're not going to see, which seems like a huge oversight if like a child crawls in front of the floats, which I feel like it would have been something that would have happened by now. So it's like, how did y'all not already have fail-safes for that? How do you not have vision of the immediate front of the float?
And so, the Beauty and the Beast float kept moving forward. The driver had no way of knowing that a man had just fallen directly in the vehicle's path. Other cast members standing nearby saw the fall, and the panic was instant. Performers in full costume started waving their arms frantically, trying to get the driver's attention. Several people broke formation and rushed toward Javier, grabbing at the heavy yellow fabric of the suit, pulling desperately, trying to drag him clear of the tires. They were simply not fast enough.
It's like you have a lot of people just like trying to get your attention. You have people physically pulling him up. Like you would assume they would see that, right? Question mark. You have blind spots directly in front of you, but like really, you can't see several people in front of you saying, "Hey, stop," or like a bunch of people crowding in one specific spot in front of you. I guess unless you're just not paying attention. I wonder if he does end up, ending Javier here. Or maybe it would be a miracle, right? And the suit is actually so tough because all the junk inside of it, it actually protects him enough to keep him alive. I don't know. You would hope so. Get another story I've never heard of somehow. So I don't know how they covered this one up, but I guess it is Disney, right? So they can probably have the power to do that.
The driver slammed on the brakes as soon as he realized what was happening in front of him.
Okay, so he did slam on the brakes, but these things aren't going that fast to begin with. Are they just that hard to get going and get stopping?
But a machine that heavy carries tremendous momentum. It cannot stop instantly, so it continued to roll forward. The third section of the massive float rolled directly over him. The injuries...
Again, like these things are going like what, maybe 5 miles an hour? Question mark, maybe 10?
These were catastrophic and immediate. Javier Cruz died right there on the backstage pavement. The cast members who had just lunged forward to help him now stood over the body of their friend. The wooden gates were still open, and the music was still playing. Theme parks operate on a rigid, unrelenting schedule. A 3 o'clock parade happens at 3 o'clock. The guest experience is prioritized above almost anything else, and the tourists lining up on the street had almost no idea what was happening. The staging area was quickly swarmed by management. The area around Javier was secured. and the Beauty and the Beast float was immediately halted and pulled out of the lineup, and the rest of the parade was told to keep moving. The cast members who had just watched Javier die in front of them, who were still processing the shock and the panic, were forced to turn away and continue.
Like, really? What? It's like, I just watched my friend die, and he's like, oh, too bad, get back to work, question mark, crack the whip. I don't know, this scene is crazy. Like, how has Disney been allowed to do this? Question mark. Oh yeah, guy just ended himself in our bathroom. We're starting at the crack of dawn, where this place is opening up at the crack of dawn. There's nothing you can do about it. Guy dies, I was trying to not say die, but like, guy dies during an event. Doesn't matter. Get back to work. I don't care if he was your friend. Get back to work. I feel like you would have to quit immediately. Like, okay, like, screw y'all guys. Like, I watched my friend die, and you just like get back to work immediately. Nah, I'm out. Bye.
Costumes. They had to go back. They had to wave, had to dance, and act out their routines. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration immediately stepped in to investigate the accident. They shut down all parade operations at the park, while they examined the safety protocols that allowed a performer to be crushed by his own float. The investigation revealed that the working conditions were simply too dangerous, and Disney was fined $6,300, which was
$6,000 for this man's life.
a relatively small amount of money for the company. But the accident forced permanent changes upon the entire theme park industry. Characters were no longer allowed to walk directly in the path of moving floats. The parks today are undeniably safer because of what happened to Javier, but those changes offer very little comfort to the people who were standing in the staging area that afternoon. They are the ones who had to carry the memory of what had just happened. Years later, that normal Wednesday morning would take on a very different meaning.
This is almost 4-year-old me at Disney World with Pluto. Right after this picture was taken, he went backstage for the parade and was run over by a float.
A story began circulating online from someone who had been a guest in the park on that specific day. Or scrolling back through their old photos from their family vacation, they found a picture of themselves standing in the Magic Kingdom. They were smiling, laughing, and getting a warm hug from Pluto. They checked the time and date stamp on the digital file. It was taken the morning of February 11th, 2004. The person inside the suit, the person making them laugh and giving them a hug, was Javier. It was a completely normal vacation for those guests, and it was a completely normal Wednesday morning for Javier's 2 children, who knew their dad was at work, making people smile. And just a few hours after that picture was taken, the heavy wooden gates opened, Javier stepped into the staging area, and never came back out.
Hidden in the Matterhorn? Question mark. This is the last story. It's also the shortest story.
Most people go to a theme park to escape reality. They want the bright colors, the cheerful music.
I'm pretty sure I've never been to a theme park. Question mark. Does SeaWorld count? I guess I've been to SeaWorld. I've never been to Disneyland or Disney World or Six Flags Fiesta Texas or anything like that. I don't think I've been to Six Flags. What else is there? I guess SeaWorld counts, but I haven't been into any of the Disneys. And now we have the Nintendo Land. Haven't been to that. Obviously, haven't been to that if I haven't been to Disneyland / World. I don't even know which one's better. You would assume Disney World is better than Disneyland, because it's like World is bigger than Land, right? I don't know the difference. I just know, it was supposed to be a big deal to take your kids to Disneyland for back in the day, but I never got to go. Question mark, right? That's like trip across the continent to go to Disneyland, across the country, I should say.
And a comforting feeling that the outside world cannot reach them. But when the crowds leave and the music finally stops, what remains is completely different. Beneath the surface, the park is just a collection of heavy, unforgiving machinery. When the Matterhorn bobsleds opened in 1959...
1959? What are you talking about? Disneyland's been around that long? Question mark. Since the 50s?
It was an unprecedented feat of engineering. The designers built a 147-foot artificial mountain out of timber and tubular steel, effectively dropping a piece of the Swiss Alps directly into Southern California. And for decades, it always delivered exactly what it was designed to do, accompanied by the terrifying roar of a Yeti. The Matterhorn wasn't just an attraction, it was a massive, heavy structure, relying on gravity and momentum. and it had actually claimed real lives.
Hmm.
In May of 1964, a 15-year-old boy named Mark Maples was riding the bobsleds with a friend, but as his car neared the very summit of the mountain, Mark unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up.
I was like, why would you do that?
He lost balance and was thrown from the bobsled, and he
Of course, I mean, this is the thing where okay, we have to make sure these things cannot be opened while they're in, but then that also causes its own safety issues. Like, what if you need to get out to get safe? It's like, which one do you go for, right? Because clearly he did something he shouldn't have done and he died for it. But then you can argue, okay, well, he shouldn't have been even given the option to do what he did, because we just have to assume people will do something they shouldn't be doing, right? So that I'd assume maybe that's why these things are like electronically locked now, right? Like once they close, they cannot open until the ride's done to stop this kind of behavior? Question mark?
He fell to the track beneath him. He suffered massive injuries and would pass away 3 days later. And then came January of 1980, where a 48-year-old woman named Dolly Young was riding the Matterhorn alone.
I was like, what? Also Maple? No, he just forgot to change the text here for this woman's name.
As her bobsled sped through the pitch-black interior of the cavern, she was somehow thrown from her seat. She also landed directly on the tracks.
Okay, so these seats are also just faulty, right? Because the first one was because of the kid did this himself, but this, we'd assume that she would not have done this, so it probably just came loose. So these things are probably just poorly designed to begin with.
The interior of the mountain is completely dark, making it impossible for the operators to see what had just happened. Before anyone realized she was missing from her bobsled, she was struck by a trailing car, dying instantly inside the cavern. After each of these tragedies, the ride was shut down temporarily, and minor modifications were made to make it safer, and then the very next morning when the sun came up, the ride would run again like nothing happened. But the mountain also hides another thing. For years, the original Yeti animatronic was an opposing, aggressive figure. It was specifically designed to stun the viewer and give them fear right before the bobsled slipped away into the next tunnel. It was a masterpiece of tension. But as technology advanced and the machinery eventually breaks down, and when the park finally decides to upgrade to newer, more modern animatronics, the original figures were removed, their catalog wrapped up and put into storage.
Okay.
And so, there was a backup for the original Yeti, a spare figure, built and kept off-site just in case the primary one ever failed. Cast members even called him Harold. And for years, he sat in a massive, poorly lit storage warehouse, gathering dust, and whenever an employee had to retrieve a piece of equipment, they would walk into the pitch-black room, flip on the lights, and would see him sitting in the far end of the room completely still. This would scare a lot of the employees.
There's no way this guy's going to give someone a heart attack, right? Question mark. I would assume it's just like, okay, he's been sitting there for so long that he actually is broken down himself, and then they go to replace him. They go replace the old one with this one, and that one like breaks down during the trip, and then the parts get inside the ride and the ride crashes or something, right? Don't tell me someone has a heart attack.
Workers would report that it felt like the massive creature had been watching the door the entire time. It would give the employees a strange feeling every time they had to walk into the warehouse alone. His synthetic fur was matted with years of neglect. You could see the exposed joints in his arms, the lifeless steel, and the motors were dead. Harold occupied that space for years. The company has never officially confirmed what actually happened to the backup Yeti, so it's definitely possible that he was finally dismantled and sold for scrap parts, or just completely destroyed, or
The scene now in the queue for Guardians of the Galaxy mission breakouts, but not confirmed if it's Harold.
he could still be there, sitting in the warehouse, waiting for the next employee to turn on the lights and see a terrifying sight.
Okay, he just wanted to talk about the Yeti at the end there, like it didn't kill anybody. So yeah, that is going to be it for today. Again, I guess we have to use the word capitalism, right? I'm not some sort of capitalism hater, but it is bad, and this is bad. I mean, this is like capitalism bad, right? Like actually bad, not like over-exaggerating bad or just jokingly bad. This is actual evil capitalism, right? Someone offed themselves at our park last night. We don't care. Get back to work. Clean up the blood and the matter from his body. We don't care. Get to work and cleaning and scrubbing this place up. Replace the roof tiles. Yada yada yada. Right. Replace the fluorescent lights in the bathroom. Make sure there's not a drop of anything in there. And then same thing here, right? Oh, your friend got ran over and ended right in front of you. We do not care. Get back to work. I would hope they would have sued, right? It's like you had to witness something traumatic and had your friend taken from you. Why wouldn't you sue them? And not just that, then forced to go back to work under extreme stress and trauma. It's like I feel like that is just prime sue. Like, I know you're getting sued for this behavior, right? But I don't know if that ever happened, right? Because I've never heard of these two things before, and there's probably like so many roller coaster deaths that they all just like blur together, right? So it would make sense to not have heard about these, but these are just crazy, and it's like, oh, never heard of it before. Right, that doesn't make any sense. Again, unless Disney has specifically gone out of their way to make sure that nobody finds out about this stuff. Question mark. I'm pretty sure this video is going to be copyrighted because of all the Disney footage in it. I'm assuming his video is fine because he's going to sit there and just fight. He's a big channel. He can fight it. But if I get in trouble for reacting to this, there's nothing I can do, right? Just have to let them have it. Question mark. Yeah, Kyuuties. That's going to be it for today. So yeah. Thanks for watching. Remember to buy my stickers and becoming a member. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed so you can watch them and subscribers. And don't forget we have a throw now as well. And shout out to the members, EmmyStarr, RaleyDrew, and alexgkiller 880. Yeah, Kyuuties. Thanks for watching. Tune into the next episode. Like, subscribe, hype, and comment. You know what to do. See ya.